right, man. So welcome to College Football Live. This is the first episode we got going on over here. I'm with Obed Santana.
Yes, sir.
And we got Orlando Miranda back here with the tech support, y'all know.
Shout out to the producer.
Shout out. We are going to be having special guests in the upcoming weeks. But for now, this is going to be it. We're going to start off with the big news today. We saw Manny Diaz is going to get the head coaching job over at Temple. That's big news right there. So that's a lot of problems coming from Miami.
Big top 5 defense that he led at Miami. Obviously, we saw what he could do over the last couple seasons. I know Miami fans are very upset that he's leaving. That's a big loss, especially because that's the only thing they really had this season was the defense.
Yeah, especially after going 7-5, they were expecting to return that defense, especially get more people in there, and they're losing a lot. You've already seen on Twitter, a lot of people are decommitting from the University of Miami, which is a big problem. But for other in-state rivals, that's a great thing. You know, we're over here in Gainesville, Florida, so that's a good thing for us, but we're going to keep it not...
we're going to keep it subjective here. But definitely the recruiting with Manny Diaz hurt a lot. Obviously, Mark Ritz, he's looking like he's a little bit lost right now. I mean, his offense is awful. He just needs to get rid of play calling right now. But for the defensive side right now, what we're seeing is pretty much everyone's attracted to Manny Diaz. I mean, he could have left to Florida State last year. He chose to stay in Miami. And they had a couple key recruits coming in this weekend that, have been rumored to have been on the fence and heavily attached to Manny. Obviously, they won't leave with him to Temple because Temple is a smaller D1. But now that opens up for the bigger D1 schools like Florida State, to attack these players.
Yeah, so they do have a great weekend coming up. But I don't know if they're going to be able to retain all these players. They got Keon Slipperer, Jarvis Brownlee, William Putnam, Jared Harrison, and they also got Anthony Solomon. So there's a couple of big names there. I don't know if they're going to be able to get them just because they were going there specifically for Manny Diaz, that defense, the fast attacking, old school football.
Old school football, yeah. They're bringing it back to those old Miami days, early 2000s, 80s, full-fledged, we're going to come at you, we're going to blitz you because we believe our corners and safeties can guard you one-on-one, which obviously worked very well these past 2 years. I mean, 2 years ago, we saw the success Miami had for the first time in, a decade almost, that they were really, top of the college football. And then this past year, obviously the offense was very, very down. A lot of instability at quarterback, Malik Rozier and Coney Perry. But definitely the one thing was that defense was always there. I mean, the turnover chain, we can't forget about that. He brought that swag back to Miami.
For sure. So that's with Miami. Another school that's struggling a little bit after this year is definitely FSU. Looks like Willie Taggart is just like a lost puppy out there. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to bring players up to the field, getting 9 players out there. Not only that, his recruiting is not very good either because he was brought in because he was an elite recruiter. He could fix an offense, but they only have 2 offensive players coming in for the 2019 class.
And one of those being the offensive guard, I believe, from IMG.
Yep, Dante Lucas
and
Sam Howell, the quarterback, but he might be flipping to UNC, so we really have no idea.
So what we've seen there is there are 2 offensive recruits, which they are fantastic recruits and would beef up their, recruiting this year. But Sam Howell has on record said that he wasn't going to sign. His dad said that he wasn't going to sign unless he knew who the offensive coordinator was. Simply because, you don't want to put your son in a position where if he's not going to succeed. Sam Howell doesn't need to go to Florida State to be successful. He can go pretty much anywhere. He's the top 3 at his position. So with no offensive coordinator, I just find it very hard for him to sign, especially on early signing day coming up within the next 2 weeks. I just don't see that happening. Today is December 13th, and Florida State has still not announced an offensive coordinator. Obviously, they've been flirting around with Bryles. But we really don't know what's going to happen there just because of his past history and how that would reflect on the Florida State University. And then Dante Lucas, he just took an official visit at University of Florida. He's been at Miami, so his big 3 obviously would be Miami, Florida State, and UF. He's currently committed to Florida State. yet he's having a signing decision day of who he's going to sign to. So, he's pretty much a toss-up right now at where he's at.
Yeah, that's Dante Lucas is definitely somebody that, something we got to keep an eye out on them, because how are you committed to a school when you got to make a decision? If you're already committed, all you got to do is sign your NLI, send it in. So that's kind of weird. But Sam Howell, I'm not sure about him. I think he does flip to UNC. I mean, look at Temple. They lost their coach about a week ago, and they already have another head coach. And FSU is a premier, football program, and they can't find an OC. That just speaks volume to what Willie Taggart is. I don't think that they're going to be struggling for a couple of years. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I believe they'll be struggling for a couple of years, really, because O-line is a position where they're really struggling at, and that's probably the only position in football that you can't, just plug in players, because the best offensive lineman really isn't the best. Don't have the best at each position. They just have the best continuity. So you have to groom those offensive linemen to grow together, lead together, and really have a good strength there. That doesn't happen from just getting one Dante Lucas here and there, a couple JUCO recruits. It comes from them playing together. They have to get those 9-10 game starts together, keep the same 5 up front, and from there on, that's when they'll have a stronger offensive line. And obviously, it's not going to happen over a year. So that's probably the biggest problem is that, and then who are they going to have behind that line? Right now, they don't have a quarterback. I mean, we've seen DeAndre Francois, he'll probably leave, I believe, just because he doesn't want to deal with what's going on at FSU. I think he has a talented quarterback, but I just don't see him succeeding at FSU next year just because of what happened this year, no offensive line, his injury. And obviously their backup, Blackman, he did good for what they had 2 years ago, but is he really that guy that's going to lead Florida State to an ACC championship or even ACC get them to the championship? I just don't see that happening, especially with Clemson in that division.
Another player from FSU that we gotta keep an eye out is on Akeem Dent. Right now he's committed to FSU, but it doesn't look like it's as solid as it was about 3 months ago. He's currently, he's been visiting Miami. He's been talking to people from Alabama. And he already said he's not going to sign early. He's going to wait until February. So that's a lot of time for any of these schools to come in there and flip him. He's a really good cornerback. He has good size, 5'11", 180. He can cover anybody, but that's something that FSU definitely needs to keep, because those cornerbacks from FSU last year were not doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, they're really non-existent. As we've seen the last 4 years, I hate to admit it, as a Florida fan, but FSU has been producing those DBs that have been going to the league, and we're like, okay, those guys can play. You got LaMarcus Joyner, obviously Jalen Ramsey, just to name a couple. But this year, they were just non-existent. I mean, they were getting bodied by everybody they saw. I mean,
especially Virginia Tech.
First game of the season, it was like, all right, what's going on here? This is not Florida State we've been seeing. But I will say this about Akeem Dent. I don't really know what Willie Taggart's doing. They're scheduling his official visit here. It'll be this weekend, the 15th. That's when he's set to come. I don't see why they would do that unless they know for a fact he'll sign early as a surprise or something like that. Because if we were to sign that would make sense for him to come in this weekend. But him coming in this weekend and not going to sign until February, that just gives 2 months for every other team in the country that wants him to bring him in on an official. I don't know how many he has left. But to bring him in as an official visit or, go do those in-homes, and that just kind of takes away that really close contact with Akeem Dent.
And he is coming this weekend, so don't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually does sign with FSU this upcoming Wednesday. But it is a little bit weird why they schedule something months after when they could just sign him right now. So that's with FSU, and then we're gonna cover a little bit of UF. They came off a pretty decent year after a horrible 2017 season when we went 4-7. We were god awful, but Dan Mullen came in with a swagger, came into changing the overall program, and he's done that. We won 9 games, lost 3, and offensively we're getting there, but we're not there yet. That's for sure.
Yeah, I will say this season was really, really good season for us. There was games that we should have won, games we should have lost. Of course, that's like with every season. But I will say, getting our butts handed to us by Missouri was very humbling.
No,
And what showed me the type of coach Dan Mullen was is the next week we're losing to South Carolina in the fourth quarter, and somehow we come out with the win. That really just showed how good of a coach he is to be able to motivate these players to there's something to play for here, even though we're out of the SEC East. So I think he did a fantastic job about that, and really just shows the big difference between last year and the McElwain era, or even the Muschamp era, yes. Because we would have folded and lost that South Carolina game.
For sure.
And that would have put us at a 4, and who knows what would have happened after that, maybe a 5 loss playing against FSU. It's pretty much what happened the last 4 or 5 years with FSU. Those teams we could have been more competitive with, but our offense was just non-existent. We weren't there. I think he's also done a great job developing Felipe Franks. And looks like Felipe Franks, every time so he's going against the crowd, they don't want him in there, somebody gets hurt, he stays in, and then he does his thing. So we really can't complain. He's gotten a lot better, been composed, 23 touchdowns, less than 10 interceptions, I believe. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty good season for him.
For sure. And that just speaks volume again to Dan Mullen. I mean, this is a guy that last year was struggling, had less than, I believe, only had 1,400 yards, 10 interceptions, and 11 touchdowns. And he completely changed it. He changed his body with the new, with Nick Savage, the new strength coach. And he's doing a great job. But another thing that we need to keep an eye on is on the 18 playoffs format. There's a lot of noises about that. Talking about they're tired of UCF not being able to get in, and they're tired of SEC favoritism. I don't know. I think the 18 playoff will definitely be better, just because it gives more people the chance, and then less complaining about it. And it's still going to be interesting. I mean, you have a 1-ranked Alabama with an 8th-ranked Washington State or 8th-ranked UCF. That's definitely a game that you need to keep an eye on. I would definitely watch that.
So, yeah, that's really super interesting. Like you said, the 18 playoff now. I was definitely a proponent of the playoff from the BCS, and now I do think the way things are going, the 18 playoffs is necessary. I obviously think the SEC is the best conference, and the championship week only does damage to the SEC right now, just because in the Big 12 and Big 10, they pretty much weed themselves out, of who's real and who's not. As we saw, Michigan wasn't real. Mm-hmm. Ohio State was real. They made it to the championship, and they pretty much took care of their schedule. Yeah, they had that horrible loss. And Oklahoma, again, that conference weed themselves out. Oklahoma's been on top 4 years now. So when it comes to the SEC, I think week in and week out, there is the toughest competition. And at any given week, truly anybody can beat anybody. There's been teams there like Missouri, Kentucky, who were nobodies last year, and now they're back in the mix. 5 years ago, Missouri was a very, very good team. Now they're back. Going to lose their quarterback, but, they had a good season coming back from pretty bad 2 seasons. And so I think the 18 playoff is better. I just don't know how they're going to be able to implement that, simply because of, the school of the students. How many games do you want them to be playing? They're putting their body on the line for another game? So my question would be is, are we going to get rid of championship week and just give it an outright in-season champion like they do basketball? You can have, your in-season champion, then you have your tournament champion. Or are they going to keep the championship week and maybe get rid of some bowl games, like the Fiesta Bowl, your Sugar Bowl, that aren't part of the playoffs? Are they just going to get rid of those altogether and make that the first set of playoff games? Very interesting. And how are they going to do it? Are they just going to give it to, I've heard ideas of the 5 champions of each Power 5 teams, and then the next 3 best, or what are they going to do? Are they going to keep the top 8? Because if that's the case, more than likely we're going to see still 2, maybe 3 SEC teams.
Exactly. And people are still going to hate. And not only that, the problem is that, say a Pac-12, I'm not hating on the Pac-12 or anything, but if a Pac-12, the champion is a 17th ranked team, I don't really believe that they should be in there when there's better teams that could be in, And the problem with getting the championships out like the SEC, Greg Sankey already said that it's too important for the fans. It's too important for college football because it was the most watched and highest rated regular season football game in the last 7 years.
Right. And I think that speaks volumes again to the SEC. I mean, look at what happened last year. SEC championship, same thing as the national championship.
Mm-hmm.
Could have been very well this year. In my personal opinion, I think Oklahoma did deserve to be in the top 4 just because, I mean, we can't sit here and play the game of if they were in the SEC, as much as that's true, or the tougher competition. We can't play that game of if they played Alabama in the championship, they would have lost. But Georgia didn't take care of business. They were playing against a backup quarterback. Although Jalen Hurts is very different than most backup quarterbacks, they were up 2 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. He came back and won the game. They blew it. I think that was their chance. Do I think Georgia's the top 4 team? Absolutely. Sure. I think they're going to give the best matchup to anybody, to Alabama than any other team. We'll see about Clemson, see how real their quarterback is. Freshman up on those lights playing Alabama. That's gonna be probably the national championship in my opinion. But I do think Georgia's a top 4 team, and if we're being honest, if there was an 8-team playoff, I would put my money on LSU had been in that top 8 as well. Simply because I'm not saying that they would have played not as hard because there's not that playoff system now, but if you're already in the top 10 as the LSU team was prior to the last game of the season, you're going to play with a little bit something inside of you, knowing that you could get in that 8th spot. So I think that would have been 3 teams in the playoffs, and again, you would hear, SEC homers, blah, 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 blah.
Exactly. That's the problem. I mean, people just don't – look, I get it. You don't want to see SEC teams because everybody think that their own conference is better. But when you really go down and you see what teams – actually dominate all the time. People go, Alabama's won 5 out of the last 9 for you guys. That's true. I'll give you that one. But that's still 4 other championships that have, Gators have won. LSU has won. Auburn has won. They've dominated.
And let me ask you this real quick. So I was watching the strength of schedule, and the top 10 teams, I believe, strength of schedule, I believe 6 or 7 of them were all SEC teams.
Exactly.
And they're all, if not top 25, they're like on the board. They've been in and out of top 25. But what I wanted to ask you was, so what do you think about UCF? Like, obviously they've won 25, 26 games in a row. They won 2 of their championships for their conference. Playing with the backup quarterback, Mackenzie Milton's out. But going forward, what do you see with UCF and the lower 6 conferences?
I think, let's see. With UCF, look, props to them. They've won 22, 25. I don't know. They've won too many to me, honestly. They've won a lot of games, and that's props to them. But if you schedule non-Power 5 teams and you're beating all these teams, it doesn't really prove anything. You're not playing anybody. You're playing in the AAC, weak defense, sometimes good offense like UCF, the Memphis.
Yeah. USF had a little run back when Willie was back there, yeah.
Exactly. So it's just that they don't play anybody. And then they got offered to go play UF 3 times, 3 years. And they're like, no, because we're a top 10 program. You do realize that 3 years ago you went 0-12.
Yeah, it was a 2-for-1. So they were just upset. They felt disrespected that UF would get two home games and they'd only get 1 home game. My thoughts on that is they're being very entitled. Like you said, they just came back from an 0-12 season a couple years ago. I think that now they are a top 15 team, hands down. I mean, they've won 26 in a row. I wouldn't say top 10. Like, if I was to play them against maybe an 8 or 9, they'd be a good game in a regular season. See, what I'm seeing is the ACC, Oklahoma, that conference, Big 12, I believe, they're all playing each other. So, like, there was a time West Virginia was a top 10 team.
Exactly.
There was a time where, obviously, Oklahoma was close to, I think, number 2 at one point. At least it's competitive,
Yeah, it's competitive.
Here, we're seeing a UCF and a Memphis. Memphis flirts around top 25 here and there. UCF has flirted around the top 25 here and there. But it really has been UCF. So now they're at the point where they're just dominant. They're like, would say the Alabama of their conference. Like, no one's going to beat them right now. Exactly. They're getting too many recruits. They're from Florida. UCF is one of the fastest growing colleges in the nation. It's biggest one in Florida. And now Orlando's starting to become a little bit more attractive. My thoughts on this is a friend of mine, Florida State fan. He mentioned this to me. He's like, UCF needs to stop being entitled. They need to schedule anybody and anybody they can. If they're really a top 10 program that they believe they are, they should be able to schedule Power 5 teams. Who cares if they're playing away or home? It's only going to bring more exposure and more attention to your college. Let's say they do this 2-for-1 with UF or anybody, if Miami, FSU, and let's say you go 2-1 against those teams. Now you're establishing yourself as, okay, we're for real here. We don't only win one game out the year. We're winning 3 or 4 top big games. And that puts them in a position where, okay, now recruits are like, UCF, Miami, Florida, where do I want to go? And if they really want to make money, eventually they're going to have to change conferences.
Exactly.
And that'll only lead not just to, football getting better and the university just putting a real brand on their name, but that'll help with every sport, I believe,
Exactly.
They had a great volleyball team this year. I know they were they actually hosted here in Florida. They actually got eliminated in the first round. But having that kind of top 25 in other sports besides Florida really helps the college and makes it more attractive.
For sure. And then, I'm looking at their schedule right now. They played a UConn, South Carolina State, Florida Atlantic. Pittsburgh I've given to them. That's a, decent D1 school. SMU hasn't done anything in the last 10 years. Memphis, they're, like you said, they go up to 25, they drop out. Eastern Carolina hasn't done anything the past 5 years. Temple, I'll give you that one maybe. Navy, no. And the USF that they were ranked top 25. But they just don't play anybody that's big time. Even for you to become a major powerhouse, especially in the state of Florida, you have to play big games. It doesn't matter who. It just doesn't matter who. Just schedule them.
Because, I'll give them the Auburn game that they had last year, bowl game. Obviously, Auburn came out flat. They didn't want to be there. They felt disrespect. They should have been top 4. Mm-hmm. They also, Kerryon Johnson was hurt. No excuses. They just got beat.
Yeah,
UCF just beat them. And that proved their point of they're here. But guess what? That was an Auburn team that I believe lost 4 games that season. So when you're playing in bigger conferences, anybody can beat anybody, really. We saw Purdue just whack Ohio State. Purdue is not the first time they've gone to a bowl game in, I believe, a little bit less than 10 years, something crazy like that. So anybody can beat anybody, whereas they're in a conference right now that they're really not – there's no one competing with them. And, when you have your backup come in and lead a comeback of 20 points, that just speaks of how much better you are than the other people in your conference. And even if it was just 1 or 2 games that were Power 5s, I think they could have been in the playoffs this year. There was to play an ACC mid or higher ACC team. Maybe a Boston College. They would have played Boston College early this year. I think I could see them, being in the top 4 this year.
For sure. And we just saw today. We just got the news that USF scheduled a 2-for-1 with UF. So USF is not a powerhouse. I don't think anything like that, but they're still scheduled it. They're whatever they get the money, get your build your program up, and there you go.
Yeah,
UCF should do the same thing.
That's what FSU did when Bobby Bowden came in. Bobby Bowden would schedule anybody and everybody, no matter where. He'll play anybody just because he wanted the best exposure, best competition. That's the only way you're going to get better, is playing the best competition. And I think that's what has solidified the SEC over the past 10 years as the best conference, because you're playing the best teams every week. Alabama, if Alabama was in a different conference, would they have still been as good? I don't believe so. When you're playing the best teams, you're just getting better and better every week. If yours are playing weak competition, they maybe slack off or they haven't seen adversity yet. And once they hit adversity against a bigger team, like a Georgia, let's say, maybe Georgia finishes off that game. So I think playing the best competition just breeds the best teams.
For sure. And Georgia, that's a powerhouse right now. They're getting everybody and everything. I don't know how they're doing it, but they're getting everybody.
I don't know what Kirby Smart's doing, because that recruiting is off the charts. We just looked at the running back roster, and we're assuming, that they get
Trey
Sanders from IMG. We're assuming that happens. We put him on the roster. I believe we had 8 or 9 running backs deep, 4-star plus.
Exactly. I don't know what he's doing. He's obviously doing something right to get all these recruits and all that. Props to him.
I just can't see how he retains them all. That I don't understand. He's had Elijah Holyfield on the bench for 2 seasons.
Exactly.
And Elijah Holyfield comes out and has a showing out party on everybody. I mean, he's running through everybody.
Everybody.
And I thought prior to this season, I thought he was a freshman because I didn't know who Elijah Holyfield was. Besides being Evander Holyfield's, relative, his son, I believe. Yeah. And so I didn't know who he was. I just knew the Holyfield name. Exactly. And he comes out and just runs through everybody in the SEC, along with DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
And Swift, who's also been getting minor PT last couple of years, but, obviously Nick Chubb and them boys are just too good. So he was kind of splitting carries. But now we're seeing, like, a backfield. Like, Georgia's becoming one of the best running backs in the nation right now.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I have the list right here. DeAndre Swift was a 5-star. He had 1,000 yards this year. Zamir White was a number 1 running back in 2018. He has something. Like, he played some, but he didn't play a lot. I think he was injured maybe. James Cook had 406 all-purpose yards.
Dalvin Cook's little brother.
Exactly. Trey Sanders will be number 1 running back in 2019, and he might go there. Elijah Holyfield, like you said, running through everything. It was a coming out party for Holyfield. Then they also have 4-star Brian Herrien coming in this season, and Kenny McIntosh, another 4-star. It's just ridiculous. It doesn't make sense to me how they're retaining all these players, and people wanted to play there.
Kirby Smart has really sold those guys. I mean, it's proven. He's proved that you do your time. I guess he's learned from the best, Nick Saban. Because do your time, and you're gonna get rewarded. Elijah Holyfield's been on the bench 2 seasons, comes out, and he's probably going to go to the NFL this year. It would make sense for him just because of so many running backs being loaded. No point in splitting carries when you can just go get your money now. And he'll probably find somewhere, maybe middle round, 4th, 5th round, just because he only has 1 season of film. But
the problem is that Kirby Smart is doing all this, but he needs to get over the hump because now he's just going to be doing the same thing Mark Richt is doing.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this, though. He's doing it against Nick Saban. Like, he's competing with him. No one's competed with him besides Dabo Swinney. Mark Richt, on the other hand, I just don't think Mark Richt ever had that. I don't think he's ever had that juice, man. Like, he's never won anything. I don't think he's maybe won 1 SEC championship, if he even won one. I don't know. SEC? I'm going to look that up, yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think he's ever won anything. But I think Kirby will do it. Kirby, at least, I think he's just 1 play call away. Like, that punt was just so ridiculously dumb. I don't know what the heck he was thinking. It was not even a close one. And putting Justin Fields in there for what? Like, that's just obvious.
It's like, too obvious for you to do that. It just doesn't make sense. Let's see. He has 2 SEC championships. 2002 and 2005.
Okay.
So he's won some, but that's besides the point. But Kirby Smart needs to get over the hump. You can't be doing those stupid play calls. I mean, it's obvious if you put a dual threat quarterback to punt that you're gonna run it, and it's 4th and 13.
Yeah, it wasn't even close. Yeah, it wasn't even a close one. That if he could have just snuck in there and jumped over the line. But I will say that Kirby Smart, I believe he'll be able to get over the hump sooner than later. I mean, obviously he's been to 2 SEC championships. He won 1 already. Mm-hmm. But that championship game, I mean, he's led twice now, and he just, when it comes to Nick Saban, I don't know. Nick Saban's just that guy, man. Like, he gets who he wants when he wants it. I mean, Nick Saban I can't even say anything. I think he might be better than Bill Belichick, if I'm being honest with you. Like, that's
a statement.
Yeah, that's a statement right there, man. For what Bill Belichick is to the NFL and what Nick Saban is to college football, I think he's just that guy.
Exactly.
Like, because I mean, right now, if you look at his recruiting board, I think this man could suit up two starting defensive lines coming out.
Yeah, it's crazy because you don't hear any of these defensive linemen until their 4th year, and then they go first round.
4th year, like Payne last year. Payne was didn't play much his first couple of seasons. Comes out, balls out, 1st round pick.
It's crazy.
And I didn't know who Payne was until he made a big ass tackle. And he forced that fumble in a couple of games. I'm like, who's this guy? 93 out here running the ball and stuff.
He's a monster. He's a monster. But I don't know. I think Kirby Smart is only going to get harder from now on. He is getting everybody, but UF did put a fight with them.
Up until the 4th quarter.
Up to 1st quarter, and we had no quarterback. I mean, Franks did his thing, but he is not what we want.
Yeah, he's not that guy yet. he'll be like what we have now. He'll win 9 to 10 games. I don't think we can ever win a championship with someone like Franks. That's will be very interesting what happens this offseason with Florida. The quarterback battle will be a battle, and I hope, he doesn't give him that seniority to Franks, and it's just
he picks who the best one is.
Who's the best one? But you gotta be careful with that because we might think someone's the best one. He comes out there and wets the bed, and we're like, shit, wish we had Felipe Franks,
Yeah, and we do open up with big time Miami.
Big time
Miami rival.
It will be a big time rivalry game, but the way things are going right now with losing Manny Diaz,
that's true.
I just don't think that game was. It sounded better than what I think it might be. I think Florida has the potential to blow out Miami. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
They're about to lose. I mean, Miami's already had problems with the coaches and some players. They're going to lose a couple receivers. And defensively, no Manny Diaz. Supposedly, that's a plug-and-play defense. You just got to put in the right people in the coach and make the calls. I don't see that. I think Manny Diaz just had something about him. He was a good leader, and he brought the best out of people.
Aggressive.
And I don't know if they're going to be able to find another defensive coordinator like that, especially if their offense can't do anything. If their offense can't move the ball, I just don't see how that defense is going to be as motivated. I know they're about to lose a couple players anyways to the draft because.
And they lost a wide receiver going to Missouri. Well, we don't know where he's going, but most likely joining Kelly Bryant in Missouri.
Transfer.
So that's another problem in the SEC East.
So we'll see though. That'll be the first game of the season, college football out in Orlando. Should be an interesting one. I think that'll kind of set the tone of how both the team's going to go. Yeah, both teams. I think if Florida doesn't come out and pretty much whoop up on Miami, it's going to be a longer season for Florida. They come out and do what they should do, which I think is just beat them by at least 2 touchdowns, or at least convincing win, that they just got dominated in the trenches.
Sure.
Then I think Florida will have an all right season. We'll see what happens. I haven't really looked at the schedule yet. But obviously, I think we're playing at LSU.
We're playing LSU for the first time 2 years.
Ed Orgeron, I think he's a good coach. I don't think he'll ever win anything just because he's in the West. But he definitely got them boys right, and he's bringing up that LSU nasty, hit you in your mouth mentality again. Got a quarterback finally who can throw the ball, better than his other quarterbacks. So.
Oh, we got Auburn coming.
Oh, yeah, Auburn. We got Auburn this year, so that's going to be a tough one. We'll see. They just lost Stidham.
That's true. They
just lost Stidham. As much as Auburn fans, had a love-hate relationship with Stidham, I mean, Stidham was better passing quarterback than you've had since Cam Newton. So we'll see how that goes.
The other thing that we need to talk about is perfect. About Urban Meyer. Do you think he's actually going to retire?
I mean, I think... I think he'll retire. I don't know if he'll be retired from football. I think he'll probably be some type of executive, mentor to coaches. I think if it really is a tumor on his brain or something like that. I think if that's the case, that's serious, and he might be getting out of Dodge and Ohio State. I don't see why people say that. They just went 10-1, 11-1. They just literally just won. They just wasn't the Big Ten championship. I mean, he's not getting out of a situation like Florida. In Florida, he was his team was just going down. So he got out, and he wanted to go back home to Ohio State. I think Ohio State was his home. I don't think he'll do Ohio State like he did Florida. I think he's serious about the injury. Now, do I really think that he'll want to stay out of football? No chance. I think the moment he gets some sign of life, he'll try to do something with Ohio State. If opportunity occurs, big money at a big college, and maybe, he'll probably take that.
Money does talk.
Yeah, money talks for sure.
All right, man. So we got some pretty decent bowl games coming up this weekend. So I'm ready for that. Pre-Christmas Bowls Part 1. We got the Cure Bowl. I think that's a new one. I haven't heard that one in a while. We got Tulane versus Louisiana Lafayette in the Camping World Stadium.
Yeah, it's gonna be on CBS. Tulane just made the ball game for the first time in a little bit. Louisiana. I haven't, seen either of them play, so I can't really, speak too much about that. But if I'm gonna go take a pick, I'm gonna just go with Louisiana.
You going with Louisiana?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Tulane.
Go with Tulane. All right. So how about this? The New Mexico Albuquerque one. We got North Texas 9-3 North Texas team, which played very well, and 10-2 Utah State team. Now
Utah State 10-2, man, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's 10-2, and they're playing on the December 15th bowl. that's what kind of blows my mind. Like, I would like to see a Utah State play a UCF. Let me tell you why. Utah State, I've been keeping up with them. I don't know why. I just saw them on ESPN early in the season. I was like, I'm going to keep up with these boys. I've been watching these games occasionally. They got a quarterback who can throw that thing. They barely lost to Michigan State. I know Michigan State had a bad year this year. But they lost by a touchdown, and they're leading throughout most of the game. So I think that's what caught my attention. But let me go through this real quick. First game, Utah State plays 51 points.
Sheesh.
Lost to Michigan State, still put up 31 points. Then they put up 60, 73, 42, 45, 59, 24 against Wyoming, closer game. 61, 56 on Hawaii, which Hawaii is the 8-4 team, I believe, and they're also in a bowl game.
Exactly.
Then they put the brakes off. San Jose State, 62-24, beat Colorado State, 29-24. Colorado State's pretty solid team. They actually play against bigger D1 schools. They play Florida, and then they lost to Boise State in the
by 9 points.
By 9 points in their championship game. Boise State's the top 25 team, so they've been putting up numbers on teams. Obviously we don't know too much about these other teams, a small conference, but that offense is pretty legit, and that's what I'd like to see. Like at least that kind of competition at a conference, at least from a UCF, Memphis, USF, those type of teams, just because, you're going up against pretty good offenses. You guys have pretty good offenses. Let's see how you guys match up against each other. Same thing with Boise State. Those would be good matchups. So I'm going to take with Utah State on that one because they're just racking up the points.
Utah State? Yeah, I'll go with Utah State. I have to agree with you on that one. They're putting it on everybody, so that's definitely the team to watch. Then we got the Las Vegas Bowl, Arizona State and Fresno State. That is going to be a very interesting game because N'Keal Harry is a monster. I don't know if he's not playing. Oh man, I'm about to go with Fresno State. But Arizona State is out here balling with a new coach.
Yeah, he's an NFL analyst.
What's his name? Wow, I forgot his name. Big time.
Yeah.
He's funny. Herm Edwards.
Herm Edwards.
That's what it is.
Herm Edwards.
So he's doing his thing. 7-5 Arizona State first season.
Yeah, I think they're solid. I think Fresno State's gonna go with that one too.
Yeah.
Fresno State again 11-2. They were actually in the conversation just as well as Utah State was. When Utah State was 10-1, Fresno State was undefeated at one point, and they were kind of in the conversation of if UCF was to lose against Memphis. In that championship game, who would it be that would actually be in that bowl game, that premier bowl game from the lower 6 divisions? So Fresno State was up there. I think I'm gonna go with Fresno State, especially with out.
Definitely gotta do that one.
But let's go with the the Kamalea Bowl in Montgomery, Alabama, Eastern Michigan, and Georgia Southern. I'm gonna have to roll with Georgia Southern. Them boys just moved up to D1 playoff. Bowl game, and they're dominant pretty much in the FCS. And now they're up here. Happy they get to a bowl game. I'm just going to have to go with my boy Naquan Howard out there. Gainesville, 352 made. So I'm going to have to go with my boys. And they had a good season, 9-3. So I think they'll be able to take that one on.
Yeah, and I know Seabass will appreciate this one. They beat the brakes out of Florida about 5 years ago. So they're definitely a program to keep an eye out. And you don't really see anything about them. You don't see them claiming stuff or not wanting to play big-time programs or anything like that. They moved D1. They're making noise, so definitely keep an eye on that. But I got Georgia Southern big time on that one.
Yeah. So New Orleans Bowl, we got App State 10-2, and
go
Middle
Rocks.
Tennessee.
Let's go Rock Tops.
I gotta go with App State, man.
App State, my boy Chris Washington.
Chris Washington, the other guy around here in Newberry, Florida. They're 10-2. App State just dominated their conference this year. And I think Middle Tennessee give them a little run for their money, but I'm going to go with App State on this one. Big last time. Bowl will be on Monday is the Boca Raton Bowl. And that's UAB and Northern Illinois. I think that's a super interesting matchup. I know Northern Illinois had some success earlier in this decade. Went undefeated, played Florida State a couple times. Pretty good, solid program, small program. But UAB We're talking about a team that had the death penalty, wasn't doing anything
In 2 years.
in 2 years.
2 years ago, I mean.
2 years ago, they come back, and now they're 10-3.
Crazy. And that quarterback's balling.
Yeah, I think that's pretty awesome. Pretty good story. Those players stuck around, the ones that did, and now they get to experience the bowl game at 10-3, primetime game, 7 p.m. ESPN on a Monday night. I think that's pretty sweet. I'm gonna go with UAB on that one as well.
Yeah, I gotta go with UAB. Then we got the Frisco Bowl over at Toyota Stadium. Where's that at? You know what that is?
Frisco.
We got San Diego State and versus Ohio, Miami. San Diego State 7-5, Ohio 8-4. Completely honest, I have not heard too much about them, but I'm gonna go with San Diego State just because I know they always have a running attack.
Yeah, I don't know too much about Ohio or San Diego State. I have not heard much of either of them. 8-4 and 7-5 is probably why. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go with San Diego State as well, just because I think they're gonna bring a hard run, and we'll just see what happens. I think that's it for the bowl games for this week. Then next podcast we'll cover the next ones from the 20th on. But I want to go back to some coaching. And
Well, Geoff Collins.
Jeff Collins, my fault.
Geoff. Yeah, Geoff Collins. That's interesting, and I love that hire by Georgia Tech. I love it because he can recruit. He's going to bring that nasty defense. He's going to take those recruits out from Georgia.
Jeff Collins. I mean, what I'm most interested in is, I don't know who his OC is. I got to do some research on that one, but I want to see what the heck happens because they're running the triple option for the past 20-some years. Yeah, and I mean, it was effective. I mean, they were competing when their defense is on, they were competing. And they usually had maybe one or two elite receivers in their program, and they had Calvin Johnson, who was just dominant. And then after that, they had like one or two receivers that were good for Georgia Tech, good enough to get them, those big plays when they needed it. So, I think it's going to be interesting how they adapt because that recruiting is going to take some time to really get that offense going. When you're recruiting for a triple option, you're just recruiting speed, and people who are dogs, they just want to run the ball. They don't care how they get it, I think they're not going to have a problem with O-line at least in their running attack. But I think if they can, be able to run the ball, and build up that defense, they'll be fine. I honestly believe that they'll get to an ACC championship before Florida State does. I'm on record on that they'll reach an ACC championship before Florida State does, just simply because that side of the division is not too hot, and I just don't see Florida State beating Clemson anytime soon. That quarterback they have right now is he's a real deal. He's a real deal at Clemson. So I'm gonna go ahead with Georgia Tech saying that in a couple years they'll be competing for a championship.
They went 7-5 this year, not too bad. So. Yeah, definitely an eye out for that one. And then Manny Diaz, definitely over there is going to make a big noise over at Temple. Another guy was the Liberty hire.
Hugh Freeze.
That
was interesting. I thought Hugh Freeze would have went to Alabama. I really did. Just because, he's a good offensive mind. I think that, he was a lot of rumored around with Florida State. I think that would have been a horrible hire for Florida State simply because of his history. And Willie Taggart just cannot deal with the media. So what I mean by that is that Willie Taggart would have had to deal with all these questions of Hugh Freeze, and if there's no success, when you're successful, problems go away, and I don't see them being successful just because of the offensive line. So he would get a lot more questions, and he just wouldn't be able to handle the media. As opposed to Alabama, Nick Saban has, he doesn't have everybody in their pocket, but he has them in check. They're gonna respect Nick Saban because he knows what he's done. I mean, he's brought in Lane Kiffin. He's brought in, who's the one who just left? Lockley. And pretty much you're there for 2 years to get a head coaching position. He grooms you to be a head coach again, how to really be, a good coach. And so I think that would have been his best spot. I mean, I guess he took, another head coaching job at Liberty and maybe he built something up there. But if he wanted to be a head coach at the big-time program again, it would have been going to Alabama, in my opinion, if Nick Saban wanted that to happen. But I guess it's good for Liberty. Liberty's a small school. I don't know too much about them. But I think it's kind of like a Lane Kiffin thing where he'll be there for a while just because it's easier for him. He's kind of away from the media. He doesn't have to deal with all that scrutiny. So I think it's good for him, and he's got a job. And we'll see what happens. I mean, if he brings up Liberty to a program, who knows? We might see him again in big college football.
Another interesting hire that I absolutely loved was Les Miles going to Kansas. Kansas. I mean, I'm not trying to. There's just nothing in Kansas, and for him to go from LSU, a premier football program, winning a championship there, taking them to going to 2 championships basically because they lost to Alabama, I believe, in 2011, and so 3 years later or 4 years later he gets fired, and now you see him over at after all those beer commercials, he's over at Kansas. I think that's going to help a lot for the Big 12 because he definitely knows how to recruit. So if he can bring in big-time defenders in there, that would definitely help.
I think it's an interesting place. I mean, Kansas has not been successful.
That is true.
I don't think, since I've been watching football for like the past 7 years, I don't think they've been successful. I don't think they've had a winning season. I know they just went 3-9. They got 3 wins, and that was like one of their first. Like, wow, they got 3 wins. So he's literally going to be at the bottom of the Big 12. But I won't be surprised if he brings him up, to the middle of the pack, and then within the next 2 years.
Well, I mean, they're in the bowl game now. They just won 6-6
this year.
Yeah. Oh, never mind. I read that wrong. My bad.
Yeah, they
went 3-9.
They went 3-9, and so I think he'll bring him up to the middle of the pack within the next 2 years. Competing with like Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Baylor right now. We'll see how TCU does. They were a 6-6 team, but I think we'll see what happens once he gets to the middle of the pack. It'll be interesting if he can get the recruits. The good thing he has going for him in Kansas. That could be a quick fix within the next couple of years. There's a lot of JUCO teams in Kansas and around that area. So if he can pick some decent players from there, get them to buy into his program, he might find some some success in the future.
For sure. And then the other big hire that happened was Maryland hiring Michael Locksley from Alabama, which I think is it's definitely good. He's a really good offensive coach, and Maryland's was almost right there to beat Ohio State if it wasn't for that costly mistake that they had in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, Maryland's actually had a couple good games last 2 years. I know they had one at the beginning of the season 2 years ago. They can score the ball. I think what they needed to work on definitely is their defense if they want to be able to compete in the Big Ten.
For sure.
Because you're not going to outscore Ohio State year in and year out. You're not going to. I mean, Michigan, they have a good defense. So I just don't see them outscoring Ohio State year in and year out. I think that they had a better defense. This would have been their year. I don't think Ohio State was as good as their record indicates.
So, do you see this is the last question that I have. Do you see anybody in the hot seat right now?
On the hot seat.
On the hot seat.
I'm going to go with, it depends really how hot, because to me, I think once you're past 2 years in your program, you're kind of like on the hot seat already. Personally, I believe that every coach should get at least 3 years in their tenure, just because that'll get a full recruiting, unless you do awful. Like right now, if Willie Taggart can't get a bowl game this year, I believe they'll go like 7-5, 8-4. Next year, just because I don't think the ACC is very strong. I mean,
right now, other than Clemson, yeah.
Yeah, other than Clemson, I don't see them very strong, and there's very winnable games just because it's Florida State. And they have better athletes. I don't know what's going on with their play calling or whatnot, and coaching them up, but they just have better athletes. I think they can go 8-4, 7-5. But I think if Willie Taggart can't, get things switched around, he'll be on the hot seat after next year. I believe that. I mean, because it's Florida State. You're supposed to be winning games. You're supposed to be competing with Clemson.
For sure.
But definitely is Mark Richt.
Yeah, I was going to say that one.
I would say if Manny Diaz has success at Temple,
he replaces them?
In 2 years, he replaces Mark Richt.
That's my bold statement, too.
Because Mark Richt hasn't done anything at Georgia. I mean, that's why he got fired. Yep. He comes to Miami, had one good season, but then once he started playing against higher competition, he just got smacked. I mean...
Yep. And he put 3 points against, Clemson?
Clemson in the championship game. Like, that was embarrassing, and that was in garbage time. So, I just don't see... Like, he really just can't get over the hump. And so, at Miami, they've had a bad track record of coaches. Like, Al Golden, the Golden era, like, bad.
That was awful.
I mean, Randy Shannon's a great defensive guy, not a head coach.
Oh.
So, I just don't see what Miami is looking for. I think Manny Diaz is that guy. If he can get a couple, improve Temple's record, show that he can, manage everything. Because once you're a head coach, it's not just defense. You're really just more like managing the whole organization. If he can show that, I think he'll be a head coach at Miami in 2 to 3 years. If Mark Richt doesn't, turn this thing around and start competing for ACC championships.
And he doesn't. And the thing with Manny Diaz, he doesn't have to have a great season at Temple. Look at Jeff Collins. He did what he could for those 2 years that he was there, and he got a big time hiring over at like Georgia Tech. He went 15-10 in 2 years, I believe, and he's 1-0 in a bowl game, and then obviously he just went to Georgia Tech, so he's not going to be coaching that one. So it just shows you that I think Manny Diaz is the guy that's going to replace Mark Richt at Miami 1 or 2 years from now. And then, but this year, if I'm Miami, I go get Randy Shannon. Get him from UCF.
Get him back. I mean, I think he's a good face, great recruiter. Especially in the Miami area. I mean,
exactly.
He's the great recruiter. But I will say this, I think the number one hot seat right now, though, is Clay Helton at USC. Trojans.
Yep.
I mean, he should have been on. He could have got fired this year
for sure.
But I think they gave him a chance just because of their team. They lost a lot. But Clay Helton will definitely be on the hot seat, and if he can't get things turned around, I don't see him, staying much at USC just because that program is too much. And if Cliff Kingsbury, who's been linked with USC, if he comes in there and that offense turns around, I wouldn't be surprised if he replaces him too. If they don't start winning overall games, but if the offense improves and they still lose, I wouldn't be surprised if Cliff Kingsbury maybe gets a chance in couple years.
Take that job too.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty interesting there. For the big schools, I think maybe Gus Malzahn might be on the hot coach.
Oh my God, I was gonna
on
say
the hot seat. He had a great season a couple years back, and I don't know what he's done since then. He's beat a couple teams here and there. I don't know. I just think their instability at quarterback is just killing them. I think that's their biggest problem. They don't have a true quarterback.
And they haven't had one in a while.
And their defense has been solid. They had Kerryon Johnson years back. I think their running backs are fine. But that quarterback position is just so essential. I think they're the West. They're the SEC West of Florida. Them and LSU. Yeah. I think LSU got over the hump this year with their quarterback. But I think Gus Malzahn and Auburn are struggling at quarterback. And continuing with the SEC, I think Chad Morris from Arkansas.
Chad Morris, but that's his first year.
Yeah, but it was very bad, and from an Arkansas team that's known to be in the middle of the pack, but sometimes compete.
That's true.
I know it's tough in the West, but they just got their butts handed to them by everybody, even out of conference opponents. Yeah. That's what to me sits bad is out of conference.
Yeah, had a horrible loss to. Wasn't it North Texas was one of the teams that
North
they
Texas
lost to?
Believed too. They did. I'm also been on my mind Oklahoma State's Mike Gundy. He's fallen off a lot, and I think he'll be on the hot seat this year.
Really?
They went 6-6, I believe, this year.
I didn't really pay attention to them, so I can't really tell you. But
yeah. So they had a close game with Oklahoma. And I think that's kind of how their season went. Close games, high scoring, Big 12 offense. But Mike Gundy, I think he might be on the hot seat this year. That's what I think.
I think as much as it hurts me to say this, I think Jeremy Pruitt is the guy for Tennessee.
You think so?
I do think so. He's a great recruiter. He has that old school, power T mentality. I don't think he's gonna do anything in the next few years. But if you give him time, he can be another. What's the coach from Kentucky? Bob Stoops.
Bob Stoops, yeah.
He could be another one of those. Have a great season because Kentucky right now looks like they're not contend for the SEC East, but it could definitely put a fight up for anybody.
Yeah. They can, and they've been getting progressively hot. They noticeably got progressively better every year. I will say this about Jeremy Pruitt. He's a good recruiter. It's that quarterback position in the SEC. If you don't have a decent quarterback, Missouri did good because of Drew Lock. That guy he's nice. He could play the ball, he could sling that thing. I think that's why they won as many games as they did. Now Tennessee, they have their quarterbacks is iffy since Josh Dobbs, and Josh Dobbs he was not that great, but he needed what he needed to do. Yeah, he needed what he needed to do, and he could pick up those first downs on his feet, and he was he'll make big plays when he needed to. So I'm not saying that you need a Peyton Manning. That's Those don't come often. I'm not saying you need that, but you need somebody who can get the job done and is a playmaker. Something about Josh Dobbs. I think that team wasn't overall very well, but something about Josh Dobbs is that he could win games.
Yeah, and this is the guy that is on the hottest seat for me is Harbaugh. He has not done anything in Michigan. He only beat Michigan State once. He hasn't beat Ohio State not once. He can't get into the championship. He misses out of the playoffs. He's the highest paid highest paid coach out here, and he's not doing anything. I mean, he can't get over the hump, and that's where Ohio State. He barely beats his rivals. Why are you paying this man?
Yeah, he hasn't beat Ohio State at all. I mean, Ohio State hasn't won since Urban Meyer's. Ohio State hasn't lost to Michigan since Urban Meyer's been there.
Yep, 7 years.
7-0. So this was their year, and they got just destroyed. This was all Michigan to have a top 10 defense, this, that, and the other. They had the great Rashawn Gary. They have great cornerbacks.
That white boy with
Dwayne Haskins comes in there and just torched them. Like that to me, that was beyond me. I was like, this shows Miami is who we thought. Or Michigan is who we thought they were.
Exactly.
They were
top 5 defense. You put 62 on them. That's crazy.
To me, Michigan is who we thought they were. They're not a top 4 team. They lost to Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame will get exposed in the playoff.
For sure.
That's just my opinion, and I don't think Notre Dame is. They're not a top 4 team either. They don't play anybody. I think UCF has probably just as much, a right to be there. I mean, luckily,
that's the problem.
Luckily, they play an ACC schedule, which is Power 5.
Yes.
But I think those same teams that they played, I think UCF could beat the same teams that Notre Dame played. And again, we're playing the what if game, but I don't think that if you don't have a championship game, this is where it goes to the championship week just screws the SEC, because if there was no championship week, Georgia would be in there. Notre Dame would still be in there because they're undefeated, but I just don't think it's right because they don't really play anybody and they don't even have a championship game. I think moving on forward, if that 18 playoff becomes a thing, depending on how it is of championship week or not, I think that they need to do something about the independent teams, because I would have liked to see Notre Dame play UCF on championship week.
That would be nice. That would be interesting too.
The two not Power 5s because they're not in the group. Notre Dame isn't. Who's the best? I mean, they're both undefeated. They haven't really strength of schedule is
Yeah.
I mean, they played Michigan. Michigan helped Notre Dame strength of schedule because they were highly ranked. First game of the season. So, to me, I would have liked to see something like that, and going on forward in the playoffs, maybe something like that. If let's say you get rid of, let's say you do keep, the college.
Four teams.
The 4 teams, maybe Notre Dame has to play somebody. They have to play the next best non-group of 5, or even the next best group of 5, because maybe they could have played somebody like an LSU or Florida or UCF to get in that 4th spot. I think that to me makes a little bit more sense, just because they're kind of getting away with one less game.
Yeah, and that's less people getting beat up and everything.
That's one less. Yeah, 1 week of no injuries and another week of getting that chance to lose, because every week is somebody could lose. Every week somebody can lose.
Exactly. I mean, and when you see Notre Dame's schedule, they did play a 22 ranked Northwestern, a 20th ranked Syracuse. They did beat Syracuse very convincingly, 36-3. But they struggled with Vandy. But
Syracuse played without their quarterback since the first quarter. So, I mean, that's what we usually be very subjective when you watch the games. Yeah, they beat them, but guess what? They played without their starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm. And with Vandy, they struggled. They only beat them 22-17.
And they struggled with Pittsburgh, a team that UCF beat the brakes off of them.
Exactly. That's when UCF fans were like, well, was it the quarterback Milton? I said, well, look, we play the same team. We completely destroyed Pittsburgh. So how are you going to tell us that we're not better than Notre Dame? We don't deserve to be in there.
Right.
Which is, granted. I mean, the schedule is basically practically the same, because when you see UCF, they played a 22 ranked or 20th ranked or something like that. USF, they also played Memphis, who's ranked. They have the same amount of ranked teams, other than Michigan. They beat Michigan first game.
No, UCF actually beat Memphis 45-14. Or excuse me, Pittsburgh 45-14.
Exactly, and these boys struggled, though.
They struggled. They had to make a comeback victory. So they played Navy as well. I believe that's a common opponent. And they won 35-24.
These boys won 44-22. This is Notre Dame. So you can see they practically have the same kind of schedule. So that's why UCF feel like they should be in. You know, and I don't hate them for believing that. Schedule harder people, you know, harder teams, beat them, make a name for yourself, get in the playoffs, be somebody there again.
Yeah, again, that's the thing. Make a name for yourself, because I think that's the only reason Notre Dame gets as much of respect as they do, because of their name and their history. I don't think Notre Dame's have really competed with the top team in a while. I mean,
look what happened in 2012.
They went to the BCS. It go play Alabama and just get destroyed. I mean, I get it's Alabama, but SEC teams were giving them more competition.
Exactly.
And it's just looked like they didn't belong there. They're playing with men, playing with boys, and I think that was Notre Dame's problem. I think it's super interesting that Notre Dame went to that no group of five, and I think that they should be forced to go into a group of five.
I think they should just join Notre Dame. Join the ACC and bring, if you're bold enough, bring UCF in there too.
I think that would be interesting.
That will definitely bring up the ACC up, bring some more money in for UCF to, you know, build whatever they need to do for football, big time recruiting. The nice thing about UCF is that they're in Orlando. Orlando has Tampa close to them. Orlando is huge. They have a lot of recruiting. It's a hotspot for recruiting. Everybody loves
Dr. Phillips, that area. I mean, Dr. Phillips produces pretty good athletes, at least 4 or 5 every year that go to Power 5 school. Around Orlando, I mean, Orlando's huge. So Orlando, they have a Vito, Apopka that produces another handful of guys.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Tampa's right there. I mean, St. Thomas Aquinas, everything's close, you know, in Fort Lauderdale. So it's a pretty central area for anything in Florida.
Exactly. And it's Orlando is a major attraction. Everybody wants to come to Orlando. So if you tell me I can go play football, you know, on Saturday and Sunday go to Disney, you don't think I'm going to do that?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to do that.
I mean, definitely there's benefits in Orlando. You got the Magic there, too. There's other sports teams. I think Orlando is growing a lot. Now we just need to see them play against better competition, get the money flowing, so they can pretty much just increase their program, have better facilities for their players. And that'll be the biggest thing for them when it comes to growing the program. I know we talked about Ohio State earlier and how they beat the brakes off Michigan. What do you think about the Heisman voting? How that went?
Heisman voting. Let's just say this. Yes, Kyler Murray had more yards and more touchdowns and everything. But you have to take in consideration that this man missed 10 quarters plus half the third quarter, most of the games.
Tua. We're talking about Tua.
Yes, we're talking about Tua.
So, again, this is why I'm going to go with who's the best player? I think Tua.
Yes.
And
who plays no defense?
I think that...
Like, they literally play no defense.
No, I hear you. I think Tua is the best player. But this is the thing, though. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm sleeping on Dwayne Haskins.
No,
because Dwayne Haskins threw for more than both of them.
And he played all the games.
And he played all the games, won a conference championship, just like the rest of them. And I feel like he got disrespected a little bit. Maybe it's because of that loss to Purdue. And that he was overshadowed with all the Urban Meyer drama. But I think Tua is the best player. I think Kyler Murray, he was playing in like a weaker conference to get his stats up. That's why his stats are so high. And I think that Tua, had he played those 10 quarters?
That is 2.5 games.
That's 2.5 games, yeah. I think if he would have played those 10 quarters, he would have his stats would have been way over the charts of everybody else. But then people would have said that's stat padding and all that crap. And I think it was a good competitive 3-man quarterback race.
For sure. Yeah, I think it was the best one the best Heisman race we've had in a while.
Yeah, that one wasn't overwhelmingly the better. And so I think it was a very interesting season, but I think, the truth will come out in the pudding. And when it comes down to it, we'll see Tua if he's healthy in a championship, and Kyler Murray on the sideline. Yeah.
They're playing each other.
Kyler Murray will be out playing with the Oakland Athletics in the spring. So Tua, I think, is the best one right now, and we'll see that they're gonna play each other head to head.
For sure, that's gonna be a good game, but I'm gonna have to take Alabama on that one.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Alabama easily 2 touchdowns above, possibly. Same thing with Clemson. I just at this point, like it almost looks dumb to even have the playoffs. It's just like an extra game because
it's been the same.
It's been the same teams. I mean, this would have been the same thing in the BCS. It would have been the same 2-player teams and 2 best deserving teams.
That's why we need to expand it to the 8. Then we can add more teams, man.
Yeah.
Washington State versus Alabama. Don't get me wrong.
A little Clemson UCF. We'll see.
Yeah.
That'd be super interesting.
All right, man. Well, thank you for tuning in to College Football Live. We are going to be dropping another episode next week around Friday or so. But follow us on Instagram, College Football Live. We are going to make a Twitter soon. If you have any questions, just hit us up, DM us, and we hope to see you soon.
Yeah, if you have anything you want us to talk about on the next show, just let us know, and we'll definitely bring that up. We'll try to keep up with some more recruiting. Especially after signing day,
early signing
day. We'll definitely keep up with that and just hear you guys' thoughts and bring it back to our next podcast.
And we do have a special guest next week. I mean, he's one of our friends, but he does have some insights for the Florida Gators. So you are a Florida Gator fan, definitely tune in next week. We are going to be talking a little bit about that. Obviously, not only about Gators, because we want to keep it well balanced with everything. But tune in. Thank you for listening. And all right, man, let's get this going.